Hi, I'm James McGuire, and on today's eSpeaks, we're talking about getting started with artificial intelligence, how companies can begin to deploy this emerging tech. We're also taking a look at some of the issues and challenges of AI. To discuss that, I'm joined by a major industry expert. With me is Venky Veeraraghavan, Chief Product Officer of DataRobot. Venky, very good to have you with us today.
I'm very excited to be here. Thanks.
So, of course, a lot of people know DataRobot. It's a very well-known company. For those who aren't quite as familiar, could you give us the brief, nutshell explanation? What does DataRobot do?
So DataRobot is an end-to-end AI platform. It sort of runs on all the clouds and on-prem, and we help customers sort of build, govern, and operate their AI solutions. So basically, for generative and predictive AI applications, we provide a full end-to-end set of tools to help them with that.
I'm pretty sure there's a demand for that in the year 2023. No doubt about it.
That's right.
All right. So the topic, of course, is artificial intelligence. So much interest in it in this year, obviously. The thing I sense, though, among executives is there's a certain amount of ambivalence about companies as they adopt AI. Certainly, there's the enthusiasm, enormous, excitement, a lot of dollars flowing into the sector. On the other hand, there's a sense that there's a concern for the risks and the expense, compliance, security, data protection. Your sense of this conflict, what do you see going on?
I think sort of broadly, everyone is doing AI. I think they have to do AI. I think the big issue is to have confidence in the solution. Does it work? Does it provide value? And unlike, the last generation of sort of code when sort of the software ate everything, that was deterministic, ML is sort of deterministic or stochastic. That means they're sort of concerned about like there's randomness in the output and whether it's probabilistic sort of outputs from a sort of churn model, or in the case of Gen AI, sort of what will the bot say, right? Will it spew out toxic output? So people are nervous about that. And so being able to sort of build your business process and your entire company around how to take advantage of the power of AI means you need to sort of understand sort of how to sort of control the confidence issue. And so that is really, I think, the thing that is sort of holding people back. And the industry is sort of building tools and solutions to help with that.
Well, on that very topic, it seems like one of the issues is the idea of the large language model. It seems like right underneath the headlines of the AI excitement is, well, what is our LLM and where are we getting it from? Are we buying it off the shelf? Are we renting it? Is it proprietary to us? And that may also play a role in whether what our chatbot ultimately says, or what prompt our application finally kicks out. What is your sense of how companies are dealing with the LLM issue? Are they needing to build their own? Can they buy it off the shelf? What advice do you give people about LLMs?
I would say, the best way to think about LLMs is sort of a new level of platform. Just like how we had went from on-prem to cloud, where someone else was sort of providing you the machines, people have made that transition. You should think about this as sort of the same thing, which is like these enormous models that are being built and trained on huge amounts of data that are being treated as platforms. So basically you consider that sort of as the core, and then you use your data on top of that to actually make it sort of applicable to you. Now, there are multiple approaches, obviously, just like there's no one single cloud approach. There's hybrid cloud, there's all kinds of other approaches. There's a similar thing with AI, with these large language models. There's clearly the big providers, people like Microsoft, Google, Amazon, and then there's open source, and then there's sort of the proprietary sort of the second one is the Anthropic, Cohere, et cetera. And so I think we are sort of spoiled for choice right now, almost too many choices. And so the key thing is to figure out what really works for you in your use case. They all are trained with different data, with different mechanisms. And so that's sort of an important sort of thing, which is like, it is important to sort of understand broadly what the models can do and how they're useful to your specific problem. Now, I think more specifically, I would say, start with the larger models. They're often commercial. To discover where the use case is and what the value can provide, because they're general purpose, so they're quite forgiving in sort of the answers, and they have a lot more knowledge. And once you understand sort of where a use case where the generative AI can actually provide value, then you can start optimizing. You can start saying, hey, look, is there an equivalent smaller model that I can buy that can do it? Should I, instead of running it, making a call to an API provider, can I use something that I run in-house in my own VPC? And then you can even do further fine-tuning and say, like, look, I want to do fine-tune and build my own model. The thing I would say that I have not seen yet is this need to start to build a model from scratch. Pre-train from scratch is extraordinarily expensive, heavy on sort of both compute, data, and skill. And most companies don't have that. And so I'd say you only pre-train if you have to, and most people don't need to do that. So it's a little bit of a long answer, but I think it is a process you go through.
No, I think it's a really good answer. I'm thinking, so the one key point there I'm hearing, and I want to make sure I understand. Should almost every company think about doing some customization of the model, or will some companies not need hardly any customization of their large language model?
I think it totally depends on the use case. I think there's a sort of, there are some places where it's just summarizing English text. And so that, or English or any language text, that these models can do quite well. If you're doing a very highly technical subject with lots of proprietary data, imagine you're saying, look, I'm trying to help a customer walk through, provide customer support on Boeing's engines and how to sort of help sort of look at their manual. It kind of needs the manual data, and that is not that is sort of may not be available on the internet. So I think I think it depends really on it, and the best way to do that is to evaluate the answer. Like, if the model is not providing great answers in general, it needs more grounding data. It might need more pre-training, and so the idea is that you sort of work yourself from the general purpose to the specific by looking at sort of the evaluation metrics.
Makes sense. Well, all right. I think the big question that I think you could probably give a four-hour answer to this question, but I'll ask it anyways for the nutshell answer is.
I'll try to be quiet and fast.
Well, so say there's a company out there, and certainly there are dozens, if not hundreds, of companies out there, and they're relatively new to AI. They want to get started. They know the train is leaving the station. What advice would you give to these companies that are still relatively new AI adopters? Make sure you think about this, or here's some good tips about growing your AI deployment.
Yeah, to say it very simply, I paraphrase Nike, which says just do it, which means just get in. I think I see customers and prospects, I talk to a lot of them, and they're sort of doing a lot of learning. They're like understanding it, they're looking at a lot of the risks and everything else. And so I would say that is all good, but the best way to do it is to start getting your hands dirty. And so using a platform like DataRobot that's available sort of like with all the access to all the different models, so you can sort of literally just build your own sort of bot that says, like, I'm going to chat with my manuals, right? I'm going to ask or I'm going to look at my customer support tickets. And so the idea is that get it started, and then by doing, you'll learn a lot more. I think one thing we've realized is that this is such a disruptive technology that
it's such a what technology? I'm sorry.
Such a disruptive technology. And
yeah, right. Okay.
And we all sort of got to know it exactly 1 year ago. I think yesterday was ChatGPT's 1-year birthday. So
right.
And so I think we're just all learning by doing what its capabilities are. So I would suggest every company sort of get a use a tool like DataRobot, build something out, and then say, like, hey, look, it doesn't quite work the way I want, or like it's not really as exciting as I thought it would be. Why not? And then you can start exploring the different things. You could say, look, should I build a RAG pattern? Should I, RAG's the retrieval augmented generation pattern? Should I put more data in it? Should I put different data? Should I change my prompting strategy? Should I pre-train my model? Or should I sort of fine-tune my model? These are all great questions, but you get those questions by actually trying out some concrete use case. So come up with a use case, get started, and then sort of learn and iteratively sort of develop the idea. And we've learned a lot from our customers doing exactly that.
That makes perfect sense. I think there's probably some executive out there, and I've heard analysts say the same thing. They'd say, well, oh no, you need to before you rush in, you need to carefully plan your strategy. And I can also hear some executive, in response to your answer, they might say, well, it's so expensive. We can't afford to dip our toe in the water and just start to build, because what if it's just an expensive science experiment? Are you saying that early building that they might learn from is just sort of the cost of doing business, or what is your sense of that?
No, I think some amount of expense you have to have, because it's a new technology. You haven't done it before, so therefore it's net new. But I don't think it has to be extraordinarily expensive to actually try out and learn. So I would say, like, discovering the value of sort of how to use generative AI does not have to be very expensive. Now, deploying it at scale can be expensive. And so what you want to do is to figure out, like, hey, look, if I'm using a very expensive model and a slow model on a use case that requires billions of rows, then you're going to be like, look, this is going to be very expensive. This solution won't work as designed. What are my alternatives? So the idea is that you don't get stuck saying it could be expensive. You say, like, how is it expensive? What are my choices for make it cheaper, right? And so I think that it's in the specifics that actually you get you start moving. To your point about strategy, you should have a broad strategy that says, look, I want to get into it. I have a bunch of use cases. I have something in marketing. I have something in customer care. Pick sort of whatever is interesting to you, but then actually start experimenting. And then you can say, like, and have gates saying, like, look, we won't go to production until we better understand our security principles. Like, if I'm going to send PII out, it may not be aligned with our policies, but the idea is that the experimentation is when you sort of understand what needs to be done and what you have to be careful for. So it goes from a high level strategy to more of a implementation and sort of planning process, and sort of making that sort of taking down one level of detail.
Okay. Well, let's drill down into DataRobot and what exactly it does. You spoke up front, you gave a broad view, but how really is DataRobot addressing the AI needs of its clients? I mean, it's such a mixed, broad market. I mean, I think a lot of companies are not even sure how to shop because they're not sure what all the various companies do. So talk a bit, if you would, about DataRobot. How is it addressing the AI needs of its clients?
So I'd say, three ways. So one is, first, we help customers build their solution. And for building that solution, as I mentioned, there's a lot of experimentation. There is so many different kinds of models, there are vector databases, there are prompting strategies. How do you put all that together to actually find something that is useful to your use case? So we provide a full platform that allows you to do that. Out of the box, you have access to Azure OpenAI service, the Google Palm service, the newly announced Amazon Bedrock services. You also have access to other open source models, so you can register your own. So the idea is, first, you have access to that. You can sort of create your prompting strategy. You can build your own vector database, pull it all together, and then you can actually chat with all three of them at the same time, and you can sort of see how they work with each other. So you can say, and you can really start getting a sense of what model works for what, and so that way you have confidence that you have a solution that works. So that's the first part. Second thing is, you want to sort of make sure that you can govern all these things. So there are now lots of people who are working on the same problem. We have software developers who are building the application. You have, product owners or program managers, product managers who are sort of figuring out the voice of the bot. The voice of the Red Bull bot probably is different than the voice of the IKEA bot. That is not a developer thing, it's a sort of a product owner thing. And so they have to figure out how to get the right thing. And then you have the data scientists who are building the evaluation metrics. So you want to govern all these personas talking to each other and transitioning the state. So you want to make sure there's a great way to do that. And DataRobot provides a registry and a full experience for managing that. And finally, you want to operate this at scale. So when you want to sort of deploy this model, you have to understand, hey, look, where is it being deployed? Is it being deployed inside your cloud environment next to your application? Do you want to run it on a hyperscaler? And then once it's running, how do you make sure you're learning from production, right? You're understanding what the inputs are, what questions are coming in, what are the outputs, how are you measuring the value of measuring the outputs and making sure that you can intervene. So if there's highly toxic content, or most of the models are getting quite good at sort of toxicity out of the box, but the bot is talking about something outside of the topic you want to do. You're you're starting to talk to the manual, but it's talking about music. That's not what they want. And so how do you want to intervene and make sure it stays in its lane? So we provide a structure really for building the solution, for governing all the different artifacts in the solution, and then running and operating that at scale.
That's great. And obviously, of course, there's a huge demand for that. I think the really interesting question that some people are grappling with is, going ahead, what's going to happen with the hyperscalers? Of course, offer some of these services, and you mentioned some of the hyperscalers offerings in there. And then there's standalone companies like DataRobot. Are they not in opposition to each other, the standalone versus the hyperscalers? Or because it was interesting, you really mentioned about working with them. So how does that play out? Will the hyperscalers own the future of AI in terms of being a vendor, or not necessarily?
I think like with every single sort of platform application, I worked at Microsoft for a long time. There was the Office and Windows thing, and so we said, are there things other than Office? Yes, there are. And so I think we will live in a world of competition. We we will build capabilities in the same space, but the focus really is different. Hyperscalers are really focused on scale and infrastructure and sort of making that easy to use. I used to work for one, and I delivered a lot of the work there, and so I know what we optimize for. And while DataRobot is structurally able to look at, hey, look, we are taking all of that hyperscaler stuff for granted. We actually build on top of them. So we do build on top of the work that Vertex does, or Azure ML does, or Azure AI does, or Google Vertex does. And so the idea is that, and SageMaker. So the idea is that we build on top of that and on the data platforms, and we add additional value that really helps it really make it very simple for customers to do the last mile, which is where is the value in the solution? So instead of, once the hyperscalers have abstracted a lot of this hard work, we say, look, let's build the UI and let's build the SDKs and APIs that make it really, really easy to validate, is the solution giving you value, and how do you run this at scale? That's one. The second one is, we are an independent software vendor, so ISV, and that allows us to be cloud neutral. Now, not every customer does not have a single cloud to work on. And even if they were to start a single cloud, they might make an acquisition or might get bought. Suddenly now back in a multi-cloud environment. We provide a single way to sort of have a cross-cloud version of how to sort of work with all of your solutions. So some applications might be on one cloud, some might be the other cloud. And finally, we run on-prem, so in a hybrid environment, and that most clouds cannot sort of reasonably say. So I think we have a space. In fact, we are very closely partnered with all three clouds. We've just announced a bunch of partnerships with all of them, and we actually work closely with them on the product integration as well. So we think it's a thing that we both learn from each other, and it's a healthy place to be.
That's great. All right, so it's not an either or in the future. It's going to be a cooperative or co-opetition sort of scenario. It makes perfect sense, and that's if you look at the history of IT, that's really the history of IT. It's always the way things have worked. All right, the future then. Venky, here's the big question. The future of AI in the enterprise, billions of dollars rests on the answer to this question, because I think companies want to know, where is it going? What's it going to look like? It's 2026, 2027, and how can I get ahead of it now? What is your sense when you look into your crystal ball, Venky? What do you see for the history of the future of AI in the enterprise?
I definitely think there is going to be a lot more AI. I think there's a lot of uncertainty, there's a lot of questions, but this is such technology, so much promise that I think we will definitely see a completely different worldview of sort of how AI is used and how sort of AI is just accepted. I'd say I worked through the sort of on-prem to the cloud transition, and at that time it was like unclear whether it's a big deal. 10 years in, I think I started this in 2012, 10, 12 years in, it's kind of the default. And
Right.
of course, there are people on-prem, but like it's the idea is that, the cloud is sort of the default starting place for this. So I think we'll be in a very different place. So I think the large arc, as I mentioned earlier, is definitely huge amounts of AI in the enterprise. Now, the question is, how do you get there? And I feel like it's like a river getting to the sea. It'll meander and there'll be, obstacles, and you have to sort of work around the hills and whatever else it is and the rocks. And so I think will definitely happen. And so the way I think about this is the way you get ready for that is to have a platform or a tool set that allows you to sort of accommodate for those things. Like, the technology will change. I would say, the events of the last few days with OpenAI, like it is so far like one of the best models there is. But we were concerned about whether the company's going to exist. And so even such a powerful and great company, suddenly, if you have a single sort of provider, you have issues. And so sort of you having optionality and changes, not just for technological change in the sense like which model is better, but also like, which vendor is viable, and some will come and some will go. And so having a platform that is open and has optionality for sort of solving for those things is super important. And then making sure that, you actually can measure the value, you can measure the cost. So you're not, I had one customer who just said, look, I have 50 VMs in Amazon just running different generative AI things. I have no idea who they are, but I'm getting this huge bill.
Okay.
That is not sustainable in the long run. And then that is what causes people to sort of say, hey, look, I want to turn the thing off because I can't make out the value. So having a platform that allows you to observe, maybe even sort of behind the scenes, passively, sort of where people are being used and asking for business value versus cost, you can have these great conversations for ROI. I would say I think as we all know, we are deep in the hype cycle. And so there is a lot more investment in sort of innovation trying to find out. But over time, reality will set in saying like, look, I'm spending the money. Am I getting the value? And so you really want to sort of focus on what are the use cases? What is the value? What is the measurable value that I can get? And you need to sort of have a platform that will help you do that. And that's kind of, I think, the way you sort of get from here to there, which is the path is unclear because as I said, we're finding a way to the sea. But the core constructs are all there. We know the details. We know what will happen. The specifics may be different.
Yeah, I like your metaphor of the sea finding its way to the ocean. The river finds its way to the sea. I think it's really pretty accurate. It'll meander it and it'll hit some obstacles. I sense that one of those obstacles is sometimes I'm not sure if everyone in the C-suite really understands the technology, and that artificial intelligence is not like other technologies and that it can learn by itself. I mean, cloud computing was a big step forward, and we've had a number of, even mobile was a huge revolution in many ways, but it feels like AI is almost bigger than all of them. And it's a complicated technology, neural networks and deep learning and what it all means, and large language models. I don't know if the water flows to the sea, if sometimes all the executives fully understand what's going on yet. Maybe they don't need to, but you sense that the people in charge are really understand the technology?
I think I don't think everyone understands technology. I think it's moving really fast. That doesn't mean, even cloud or any mobile, there's so many complex things lower and lower. I think the question is, how do we simplify it and make it into a set of things, questions that the execs can answer at that level. And so you really want to make sure that, at the higher level, the strategic level, you have to figure out, look, should we invest? How much should we invest? What is the value of this thing? What am I, how do I protect myself? And how do I make sure that I don't put the company at risk? Those are questions at the C-suite level. And I think absolutely people should learn enough to understand those things. I think all the vendors, us included, are working very hard to sort of do the education. That happens in every one of these sort of disruptions. But I don't think everyone has to understand how a KNN search works or a deep learning thing works. I'd say, look, I've been in this industry for a long time. I don't know all the details. I don't read every single paper. And so I think that level of abstraction, I think, is okay. But I think that sort of being able to clearly sort of abstract what are the questions that only the executives can answer, and sort of teeing those questions up and saying, like, look, how can I ask those questions? And then second, what are my options, right? Again, with respect to privacy, like, I'm running on the cloud from one of these providers. So if I send the same data to another part of the cloud, is that a good thing or a bad thing, right? Depending on your policies, it could be a good thing or a bad thing, but like, it's not like you're not trusting the cloud provider with your data. It's just that, what's the terms of service for what the model is going to be used for? Those are the questions. So you do need to be fluent a little bit in sort of those details, but it doesn't mean you have to understand every single underlying detail. We don't understand all the details about phones or the cloud for that matter.
Right. Excellent. Venky, I think you said it. It's going to be a very fascinating sector to follow in the years ahead. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise today. And please come back and talk with us again sometime.
Awesome. Thank you, James. I'd love to do that again. Thanks again.